In this video, we're going to be taking a look at how we can take our GameRes geo that we made, or our proxy model, and then use that to our advantage to go ahead and create a high resolution model inside of Maya. Now, this is going to be a high resolution model that's nice and smooth. It's not going to be the final detail pass that we're going to be doing inside of ZBrush, but it will give you a very nice and clean look. So let me go ahead and do a few things to the scene. Let's go ahead and select the low res model. I'm going to hit Control H to hide that. I'm going to select this model. I'm going to tap 1 to view the actual cage for this thing. I'm going to take this stand-in, hide that, and also I wanted to show you with your background, you can actually change the display of your background by holding Alt and then tapping B, and you can cycle through these different modes of what the background might take a look at. So let me hide the high-res model. We'll bring back the low-res model. So I'm going to hit Shift H to view that. And again, your display stuff is actually under display, so you can do show selection if you have something selected, or you can do hide selection. I'm just using the hotkeys for some of those different things. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started and take a look at how we can turn this into a high resolution model within inside of Maya. We select it and tap 3, we can get a smooth mesh preview of what this model looks like with more geometry and it being smoothed out. Now if we tap 1, it goes back to our normal mode. So this looks pretty good here as far as the shape, and this is pretty close to the shape that we want, but whenever we add more geometry through the smoothing process, it really kind of tears everything up, and this looks really rough and through here. This bottom piece is not even square anymore. So the way that we can actually combat that is we have to build up new edges and new geometry on here to hold these pieces. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to hold down Shift and right click and go to the multi-cut tool. They have the ability to hold down Control, and you can just slide and add an edge wherever you want it to be. So I'll add some edges here and here. I'll add some edges here and here, like this, and then I'll add some here on each one of these corners, like this. And now you can see whenever I tap 3 and put this in the smooth mode, if you remember before, it was getting really rounded and kind of flat. Now it's holding those edges like what we want. So this does produce a lot of geometry, but when you're making a high-res piece of geometry that you're going to use for baking out the normal maps, the high-res part of the geometry is not a big deal. What is a big deal is the actual final shape. So you can see now this is turning into, this thing down here is turning into something that looks more like a surfboard or something, instead of this shape that we have that maybe is iron or something. So I would just go ahead and take these pieces. I know for the GameRes geo, we want this to be as efficient as possible as far as the geometry that we have. Now that we're making a high-res piece of geometry, we need to start worrying more about the shape. So I'm going to go and cut directly across from this piece here to here, and we kind of have that on the top already, so we'll just keep that, and I'll run this across here like this, and we'll do one more here like this. And it's getting a little confused here real quick. Let's just hit undo like that, and I just want to run from here to here, right across there. Now if I tap 3, you can see it's holding that shape just a little bit better, but here's what we can do to kind of help this thing out. We're going to hold down Control and build up some support edges here, 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 and also there, like that. Now let's tap 3 and see what we're getting. So you can see we're getting these shapes to hold a little bit better, and that's starting to look good. But the back of it is really, if I tap 3, see how that's rounding quite a bit. So we want to hold those edges, so I'll just hold Control and click there, like that, on this piece. And now we'll tap 3, and it's getting a little better. The back part is going to be kind of tricky because of the way that the geometry is laid out. Like if I hold down Control, we could go along here like that, but that is going to end kind of weird up here, but we can take a look at it. And it is holding fairly decent. I can hold down Control and click here like this as well. Now tap 3, and it's getting better. Here's what it did though. It took this edge and ran it all the way up here. I'm not a big fan of this, so I want to keep this rounding here. But what I could do is I could hold another edge, so I could do another edge here like this and tap 3, and it is going to start helping with that. So if I tap 3 now, you can see it's getting a little bit closer to holding a corner or edge on here. Let's tap 1. The other thing is, if you get this thing, if you want it to be really tight for how, how it's holding a corner like this, you're probably going to need more geometry in this area. So if I do that, you can see it's starting to harden that thing up just a little bit like this. The other thing is that can kind of help is if we have a little bit more geometry running through this thing, so we've got maybe more evenly distributed geometry like this. Now if I add these in here, really what is going on is I need to have this be a bit more rounded, because I've added this geometry. I really want this to be round, and now I'm adding this new geometry that's kind of making flat shapes now here. So I can just take those points, scale them out just ever so slightly to get this rounding. I'll tap 3 and check that out, and you can see how that's starting to get a bit better for this. So now if I just click off the model, here's where we were at before, something really smooth like this, and then now through this we're starting to get some nice high-res geometry like here. So I'll tap 1 for this again, and I'll show you just a few more edges. Some other things that we can do is use the Beveling tool. So if we click these edges like this, and let's go ahead and shift right click on here and say bevel edge, we can do some beveling on these pieces, and that'll help hold the edges. So we'll tap 3. You can see it's starting to hold that a little bit better. But we'll go back to our multi-cut tool, and we'll add some edges right here just by holding down Control and clicking. So I'm going to try to get close to this edge here, close here, here, and here. Now I'll tap 3, and you can see how it's starting to hold that shape a lot better. Also, if I want to get really close in here, I want this to hold this edge here, I want this edge to hold, I want this edge to hold. So if I tap 3, now you can see how that is starting to hold a little bit better. Now if I want this one to be a bit more tight right here, you see how this kind of rounds off. I can add even another piece right here, tap 3, and you can see how that angle is starting to be a bit more sharp. So that's how things were finished out. If you want to see the geometry for here, I ran a split going from here all the way around, and then I took splits, went all the way around from here back to this point, splits from here all the way around, and then hardened up this edge by just going through here and adding a split. So let me hit undo, and I can actually add that. I'll hold down Control and click on here, and I want to hold this down here and this. So if I tap 3, you can see how it's starting to harden up that edge around through here. Now there was quite a bit of work that needed to be done to this piece here. I actually got rid of this geometry that flowed down this way, and then just had it go and continue on here all the way across like this, and I got rid of these pieces. Let me just show you real quick. So we got this getting rid of here, and these pieces of geometry were gone, and then we had to run the geometry back through here like this. I'm going to hit enter, and I need to do the same thing for this piece right in through here, run it back like this, and now I'll tap 3, and it's starting to hold a little bit better. But now once we've got this thing kind of pushed out this way, we can hold down Control and add a support edge here, to give hardness through here. Support edge along the bottom, support edge right along through here, a support edge right here like this, and I'll tap 3 and you can see that's starting to hold that shape a bit better. Still not perfect, so I might have to do even another one there at the bottom to hold hardness a little bit more on there. So I get this back, I'll tap 1. And like I was saying, the other thing that can help is if you add a little bit more geometry through here in certain sections. Kind of even this out just a little bit. Now when I tap 3, you can see it's starting to hold that shape a bit better. It definitely feels like I need a bit more geo through here, so maybe if I do something like this and tap 3, now you can see the shape in comparison to what we started off with before. So I think you can get the grasp of what's going on here. There was a little bit more put in these areas right here on these. Something like that. Now that's going to hold these edges nice and hard, and you can see the difference between this and this now. And if we select out the model, let me change out of this tool, I'll hit F8 to go into object mode. Now you can see quite a bit of difference between the work that we've done to hold those edges. So again, this is not efficient as far as like something that's going to go into game, but this is a different problem that we're trying to solve here. We're trying to make high-res geometry that's got these nice corners and bevels and these edges that are held really tight, and we're trying to steal the information, the shading information from this, and push it onto our game res model. Alright, to inspect the final quality of our model, I'm going to tap Alt-B, just turn the background black like this, and let's just spin around here. I want you to make sure that you have a material assigned to this thing that's a blend, and it's got a nice specularity rolling off of it. You can actually see the quality of the model a lot better this way. So there's a couple different ways that we can do this. We can just right click over the model itself and we can say assign new material. It's possible you could do that, and you can just click this blend material and assign it that way. Once it's assigned, you can select it, hit Control A to bring up the attribute editor, and you should be able to see up in one of these tabs the actual material that's assigned to it, and then you could play with like how bright the specularity is and kind of the fall off of it. I want a nice kind of broad fall off on that, and the spec to be pretty hot with inside of here like that. So that's one way of creating this. The other way is we can go to Windows, Rendering Editors, and then go to the Hypershade and open that up, and this is a whole new window where you can build materials, things like that, right? So we've got the Maya materials selected right in here. We can just go ahead and click blend, and it'll make a new material for us. You can see it here like this. We can double click it to open up the attributes like what we were looking at before. And if you want to assign it, there's different ways that you can do that. You could middle mouse drag this onto the object. That's one way of assigning it. The other way is to have the object selected. You could right click over this right here and right click and hold and say assign material to selection, and then that way you can see it's now assigned to it. You can give it a color, things like that, but I just want to leave it this flat gray with a nice specularity on it. And if I go ahead and delete this material, you can see it's going to turn it green. So if you ever run into a case where there's a model and it's doing this weird green shading, that just means that something happened to the material and there's not a material assigned to it. So I'm just going to take the blend material that I had before, middle mouse drag that, and just assign it on there. So that's how you can assign a blend shader, just to check things out and make sure everything's working well. The other last thing you can do to check everything is you can hit Control Spacebar, and that's going to hide all the rest of your interface. We can hide the outliner as well, and then we can get a really nice large view and then just inspect the quality of the model that we have here. So when you use this blend shader, it really does put a lot of focus in on what is the quality of the model, and if you see problems with shading, you'll start to understand that that shape of that model a lot better. You can see because of the end of this was made with poles, You can kind of see some odd shading here and there, but nothing too bad in there. So this gives you a good idea of when you go to bake your final normal map, some of the quality of maybe some of the edges that you're shooting for, that you're trying to translate over into there. So I'm just going to hit Control Spacebar again, and it'll put us back in this mode here. If you want to bring up the outliner, we can go to Windows and then go to Outliner, pull that in here. Again, when saving out, let's hit the spacebar and check our views from all the different angles. So we'll just tap F and all the views to get a nice clean scene. Tap spacebar to go back in here, and then we'll save it out. The last thing that we want to talk about is if we want to turn this into actual geometry. Right now, if I just tap 1, this is the base cage that we have, and then if we tap 3, this is that smooth mesh preview that we're looking at. So if we do want to turn that into actual real geometry that we can get out of the program, we're going to need to go up here to modify, and then we're going to go to convert, and then convert the smooth mesh preview to polygons. Now when you do that, you'll see this wireframe change, but you can see over here in the channel box we still have this ability to change the smooth node that we have here. So right now it's adding 2 divisions to the model. If we put that down at 0, we're back at our base cage that we started off with. If you do 1 division, you can see it's going to take each quad that we had and divide it into 4. And then if we do 2 divisions, it takes it each one of those additional quads and divides it into 4. So you're getting these different levels of subdivision on here, or divisions within the model to give it more geometry. But if you wanted to bring this into ZBrush, you would want to have it maybe at some level like this, and then kick it out, and then export that out as an OBJ at that point.